This program is underwritten in part by
Janelle Encarnacion Art. Carlos Furniture, a family-owned business, has been providing furniture, appliances, and household accessories since 1997. The flagship store on St. Croix and another on St. Thomas are both open for in-store shopping and are able to ship to various locations in the Caribbean.
and viewers like you. The views expressed on this program are not necessarily those of WTJX, its board, staff, or underwriters.
Welcome to the Bookcase. I'm your host, Shawna Richards, a sometime writer and a longtime reader. I invite you to join me as we explore the bookcase and celebrate Virgin Islands authors and talent. Each week on the Bookcase, we'll introduce you to a local author and learn more about them and their work. A storyteller lives in each of us, and I'm so excited to give our homegrown storytellers a chance to tell their story. Tonight's selection from the bookcase is My Island Home, St. Croix, and I'm honored to welcome its author, Tamika LeRay. Tamika, welcome to the bookcase. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. My name is Tamika LeRay, affectionately known as Miss T, and I am the author of My Island Home, St. Croix.
What inspired you to write this book?
So I relocated to St. Croix during the pandemic after living my entire life in the northeast section of the States. And when I arrived, I just fell in love with the people, the culture, and specifically the children with special needs that I worked with. And I wanted to create a story for them that could teach them, but also represent them in a way that made sense for their culture and life on the island of St. Croix.
Was it difficult for you to write a book about St. Croix?
No, it wasn't difficult. I spent almost a year there before I felt the inspiration to write. So I had a range of experiences in my professional life and personal life, and it all just came together to me actually one night when I was sleeping that I wanted to create this book. And so once I sat down and put pen to paper, it flowed easily for me.
When you were writing this book, you take the author throughout Christiansted. We see so many bits of St. Croix, familiar sites, culture, history. Did you have any local guides, any local writing mentors that helped you just to piece everything together?
So not directly. I didn't have any direct local guides, but I was very much inspired by every person I met and every place I went. I actually started writing by looking through photos I had taken over my year on the island. And then I would ask various friends on the island if certain things made sense. I did also have friends, make sure that there was an authentic voice that came through my experiences. So informally, I solicited friends to provide input, but I really allowed this to be my creative baby in representation of the children on the island.
Did you find in putting your book together and in your work as speech language pathologist that children of color aren't represented in the materials that you use? Were you trying to fill a gap in the materials that you use?
Absolutely. So, in addition to children of color, there's definitely a cultural nuance of being a Virgin Islander, specifically being from St. Croix. And so, although I had access to a range of materials for children of color, there are some cultural nuances that I wanted to make sure that the children I served were able to see represented and were able to learn about in a context that made sense to them. So, in part, yes. Yet I really wanted to highlight the beautiful cultural elements that I wasn't able to extract from other learning materials.
Is this the first time that you've written a book to help you in your work and help you in serving your clients?
So this is my first children's book. Yeah, it's my fifth book overall. I loved how you introduced yourself, Shawna, as a sometime writer. So when I've written various faith-based self-healing books, but this is my first children's book, and I'm really proud to share it.
What I really liked about your book, My Island Home St. Croix, is the poetic feel to it. Um, each page, each section, there was just that sense of rhythm in the language and poetry in the language. And was that something that you intentionally set out to do, recognizing the needs of the children that you serve?
Absolutely. It was extremely intentional. Throughout the book, I used poetic prose as well as a variety of strategies that are actually needed in early literacy learning for young children. So it was intentional to have that rhythm, those rhymes, as well as certain vocabulary choices there in alignment with what children should be learning or are learning on the Virgin Islands and in St. Croix.
What has been the feedback now that My Island Home St. Croix is out into the world? What type of feedback have you gotten about it?
That's a great question. So from other educators, they're really grateful for um, this book and to share this in their classroom. I have independently been able to share this book with over 200 individuals, also in partnership with local organizations on island who are sharing this book. And the feedback has been amazing. They love seeing the culture represented. And a lot of individuals have been grateful that for me who relocated that I was willing to give back and doing so from an open heart. And then the children loved the pictures. I've had friends send me pictures and videos of their children reading the book, enjoying the book. And it's been awesome just to receive that feedback and to see that my words and my experience are now being shared with those across the island and beyond.
Did you work with an illustrator? What I appreciated about your book is the colors were so vibrant, the illustrations were so just colorful and dynamic, and really represented the St. Croix that we all know and love. Did you work with an illustrator, and how did you find this person?
I did. I actually worked with an illustrator that I hired, although in retrospect, I would have loved to work with the local artist. And so as I continue to create, that is my plan. But I served as creative director for the illustrator that I hired, using pictures that I had taken on my own, as well as really coaching them through what I wanted the book to feel like in terms of having those bright images, but making sure that they were accessible for children with visual limitations and other limitations. So I really coached someone through it who worked with me. Yet moving forward, I would love to work with a local artist to really create that partnership.
What are some of the key priorities that you wanted to address in this book that were informed by your day job as a speech pathologist?
That's a wonderful question. So I really, really wanted the book to be shared from the perspective of a child. I experienced St. Croix as an adult, and it's an amazing place to live and enjoy. Yet one of the needs that I've seen is really for there to be a heart for children across the island and in a lot of the different resources and activities. And so I wanted to speak from the perspective of a child, just to draw children into what their experience is like living on the island. So that was really important to me. And then also, like I mentioned, really adding those educational elements, those literacy elements that are critical for young children to learn and have exposure to in a way that's culturally relevant to them.
How important was it for you to write a book that is culturally relevant to young St. Croix students?
Extremely. It was extremely and is extremely important to me. So throughout my career as a speech and language pathologist, as well as when I served in education on St. Croix for a bit of time, I was a big advocate for ensuring that students had access to culturally relevant and significant materials that reflect them and challenge their personal experiences. And so it's always been a major part of who I am professionally, and will continue to be a big part of who I am as a writer and in my personal life. So it's very important that the children and their families have access to materials that not only show the beautiful images, but that represent the pride that I know that a lot of Virgin Islanders and Crucians shared with me. And so I wanted to just keep in that energy and make sure that I was producing something that resonated with children and their families from a pride standpoint.
So, My Island Home St. Croix is your first children's book, but you've said it's not your first book. How long have you been writing?
So I've always been a writer ever since I was a little girl. That was my favorite subject. I would create stories from my imagination. Yet my first published book was in 2018. I had gone through a variety of life changes, and I wanted to share out with others hope and inspiration that that I gained while going through those various life experiences. And I've consistently written since then. Yet again, this is My Island Home St. Croix has been one of my favorite projects because it lives outside of me, and it was a gift to the island of St. Croix. And so I'm really excited to share about this.
And that is certainly the sense that I got from it, that it was a love letter to St. Croix. And I think it was especially meaningful that it was written for children and to help see things that sometimes we walk by every day and we take them for granted, and to just see them from a different perspective. But how did you make that shift? You said you've been writing since you were a young child. How did you make that shift into speech pathology? Tell us a little bit about that story.
Absolutely. So, like I mentioned earlier, I grew up in the Northeast. I'm originally from New York, and I had a range of experiences that actually did not prepare me to go to college and school. Yet I was so blessed to have an internship that introduced me to working with children who had special needs. And I absolutely fell in love with the field of speech pathology as a high schooler. And from there, I realized that not only my love for communication was good for me, but to be able to provide children with the gift of communication, whether it's verbally or otherwise, really just grew into my passion. And so it's been 10 years since I began in the profession, yet it started as a young girl who loved to write and loved to read and found so much value in communicating, to being introduced to a field such as speech pathology where I could. Be the catalyst to children providing their own voice. And so that's kind of been my journey. And then writing this particular book, I came to St. Croix. I was serving as a speech and language pathologist at first, and I just fell in love with the children, and again wanted them to be able to not just learn what they needed to learn, but learn about their culture in a way that made sense and that could just bring again forward that pride and joy of being Crucian. And so here I was able to blend my professional training as well as my creative efforts to create My Island Home St. Croix.
When you were growing up and going to school, were you seeing people that looked like you in the books that you were reading?
Not much. I really didn't see a lot of Black characters who had similar cultural experiences or even a diverse family background, such as I. And so, as I would write as a young student, I would create those stories that I needed. And as I've written for years, I would create the stories that I needed of faith, strength, and hope from the perspective of a Black woman. And now I'm really excited to be able to pour out my experience on St. Croix on behalf of the children there. It's been a nice journey for me to expand beyond my personal needs, and like you mentioned, creating a love letter for St. Croix, because I believe the children deserve it.
So you talk about literacy and how you would like for this book to support literacy. Is that one of your key goals in your writing throughout all of the books that you've written?
Absolutely. So I, for the majority of my career, have been a school-based speech and language pathologist, and so working very closely with teachers and other educators towards literacy outcomes and goals, specifically for children of diverse backgrounds and various abilities. And so that's always been a passion of mine, and I continue on. Um, I've continued on in making sure that that shines through my creative endeavors, such as my island home, St. Croix.
So I always like to ask the authors that we host on the bookcase what they're reading. What are you reading right now?
So currently, I'll be honest and say in the warmer months, I'm mostly a podcast person, but I have been reading Living Beyond Your Feelings, Controlling Emotions So They Don't Control You. I'm really into self-help and development, and that's a book by Joyce Meyer. And so I'm reading that, but I'm spending a lot of time taking in podcasts related to a variety of different concepts and ideas. It's just
What writers are you inspired by?
so my favorite book I'll say is The Other Side of Paradise by Stacey Ann Chin. So I really love her writings. I also love a lot of autobiographies. Please pardon, I'm not able to name as
Uh-huh.
many authors, but I love certain books that really provide and share about the author's story. So The Other Side of Paradise has been my all-time favorite. And then I'm blanking on the names of others, but I can share that with you another time.
What can you tell our audience about your writing process? You've written, books that speak to your own personal history, and you've written a children's book. What can you tell us about your process? Are you a pen and paper person? Do you sit down in front of a laptop? What does writing look like for you?
That's a great question. So I am mostly inspired by my experiences. And so I mentioned earlier, I like to take a lot of pictures of my environment. And usually my idea from a book comes from either photos I've taken or an experience that I've had. And then from there, I will sit in front of my laptop and create an outline. And that outline isn't necessarily just hopping right into the context of the book. It's what did I learn? What are my reflections? And how would I like for this to, if you will, bless other people? And once I am clear about that, I'm able just to create with a nice flow. So even creating my island home, St. Croix, I want to say the writing process for me took about a month, really
Mhm.
making sure that I was focused on the feelings that I felt while I was on the island, and also making sure that I was able to tap into my inner child on behalf of the children of the island. And so it took me about a month after being really inspired for a year, having a year of photos and a range of experiences and relationships that really fueled my passion and love through my experiences while there.
Did you work with you? So in all of the books that you've written, did you work with the same publisher or use the same self-publishing process to bring My Island Home St. Croix to print?
So that's the fun part as for me. So I self-publish and I've gone through learning a lot of that process. And so to answer your question, yes, because I have done that work on my own. And then I will use friends as editors and hire a formal editor at the end of the process. But overall, I've self-published and I've enjoyed that experience. It's one that, again, balancing out my professional and creative side, it's also a part of the process that I really love.
So how do you make that time to write? How do you make that time?
So I do have the habit of journaling every morning, so that routine helps me. And I don't say I have a set schedule, but my biggest motivator, like I mentioned, is how can I bless other people? So even on days when I'm tired or exhausted, because I do also work, I just say, listen, I want my creative efforts, such as my Island Home St. Croix, to be available. And so I just have motivated myself and mobilized myself through taking nature walks or making sure that I have a routine, such as getting up in the morning instead of journaling, writing or typing, having courageous conversations around whatever I'm thinking of, and really just allowing that to fuel me when I get up in the morning and write. I will say I'm most productive in the mornings, and so that's kind of how I'm able to produce. And it fuels me. I love writing. I love the process of writing. It feels different than when I'm doing other tasks for work. Like, this is my creative outlet. And so it feels good. I see it as self-love and self-care while I'm producing books
How
such as.
many years have you been journaling?
So I have been journaling. I want to say my earliest journal is from 2003. So that is about 20 years of journaling. Yes. And so I will say I've had periods where I wasn't as consistent, but I've grown to appreciate it as a consistent practice for me that just helps me to feel good each day.
So when you were growing up, a young girl going to school, was there any particular teacher or person that really inspired your love of writing or encouraged your love of writing?
Absolutely. So I have several teachers that come to mind. The first was Miss Weinstein, my third grade teacher. She saw the gift in me and would call it out of me, and would challenge me to share my stories when I wrote. And then also my ninth grade teacher, Miss Adams, she was very tough on me. Those beginning high school years were challenging. I had a range of family things going on, and she saw that light in me, and to this day is still a big encourager of me continuing to write. So those two particular teachers definitely stand out. Yet I want to say across my academic career, that's always been highlighted as a strength of mine. And I've had a range of teachers push me to write because they saw the benefits for me. And it's been an honor to produce books such as By Island Home that are not only reflective of my experiences, but that can, again, bless others.
Do you see yourself writing more children's books in the future?
Absolutely, I do. I continue to be inspired by my time in the Virgin Islands. I also do have a small dog, and I would love to create, again, literacy based book series based on Reese, which is my dog's name. And so those are projects that I'm still brainstorming and will be in the works soon.
What tips do you have for aspiring writers out there?
I will just encourage you to know that the world needs your stories. Know that every experience you go through, whether small or big, major or minor, that others are to be like, share that out and know that your voice is meaningful. Um, and then the last would be like, I encourage folks to just write, whether it's writing in your journal, writing a book or a project, share out your thoughts, because it is, I believe, a great way just to heal yourself. And so share, no matter how young or old you are, share out and be encouraged that your voice and your thoughts matter.
And I thought it was just so important that you thought our young Virgin Islanders, our young Cruisians, needed to see themselves in a book and brought that book to the page. So with that, I'd like for you to share a favorite passage from My Island Home, St. Croix, with our audience.
Absolutely. So my favorite passage is on page 28, and the accompanying picture is on page 29, and it's about the fruit. I loved all of the delicious fruit that I enjoyed there, so I'll share this. It says, on St. Croix, we're an island that's teeming with fruit. As the earth is so fertile, the trees can take root. There are coconuts, passion fruit, and mangoes to eat. Can you taste how each bite is so juicy and sweet? And so that's one of my favorite passages throughout the book. I really thought that the words in the picture just bring that experience to life. And that was one of my favorite things to do throughout the island, which is enjoy great food, especially the fruit.
So maybe there's a book about our local fruit in your future.
Perhaps I definitely could expand on that.
So in setting out to write My Island Home, St. Croix, you deliberately chose poetry, recognizing that it would support the literacy goals and the needs of your intended audience. So was writing poetry hard for you? or putting all of those pieces together difficult for you?
It wasn't. I've always been a poet, if you will. So that's been my chosen writing style for many years. Outside of writing books, I have also performed poetry. And so it came very naturally for me. And then again, being inspired by the people, places, and things on the island, it really flowed quite naturally for me.
When you were writing My Island Home, St. Croix, and with all of the fantastic things that you could put about St. Croix in your book, was there anything that didn't quite make the cut?
Was there any? That's a great question. So I would have loved to be a little bit more specific, perhaps with some history. I know I've grown to learn about some of St. Croix's amazing history. And so perhaps that's something I could expand on. Yet I really kept it to day-to-day life and didn't focus so much on history. So perhaps I could have sprinkled in a bit more there. But overall, I'm really, really proud of My Island Home, St. Croix. And I think it'll be a different type of book for children and their families on the island.
When you set out to write it, were you working with a specific page count, or were you just giving yourself the creative freedom to let the book take you where it would?
I definitely worked with creative freedom. I wanted to capture as many experiences that the children of the island would have seen and been privy to. So I just allowed it to flow. And I believe the book is pretty robust with a lot of information and visuals that I wanted to share.
And while you have written it as a children's book, I certainly think it's a book that can be enjoyed and appreciated by audiences of all ages. But what is the key message of your book?
So my key message of the book is, I think we mentioned it earlier, is to really see the island through the lens of a child. I know that, St. Croix has a lot of individuals who come and visit and are able to partake in a range of activities, yet there is so much history and culture of the children and individuals who have grown up on the island. And I really, really want everyone who reads the book to take a moment to slow down and enjoy the simple loves of the island, the fruit, the views, the people, the places, the music and culture, to slow down and really take in how rich and robust Crucian culture is.
So now that you've written My Island Home, St. Croix, and gotten such favorable feedback, what are other ways that you feel that your work as a writer, Tamika, can help to build literacy?
That's a great question. So I'm really hopeful to not only share the book, but I'd love to be able to donate books to some of the local schools. My plan is also to host live reading events throughout the island. And so I'm hopeful to expand on that. And then in general, I do continue to practice as a speech and language pathologist and educator, which works in tandem with being a writer. And so as I'm inspired, my plan is to continue to share child-centered literacy for children who do and do not have disabilities. But for now, really just expanding on the impact of My Island Home, St. Croix, and continuing to be open to the experiences and opportunities that come my way as a writer and educator.
And that is something that we can certainly appreciate. It's been a pleasure to learn more about our local talent, Tamika LeRay, and her book, My Island Home, St. Croix. For more information on this book or any of the books featured on this program, visit our website at www.wtjx.org. We appreciate your support of our local authors, and we'll see you next week when we take another book from the Bookcase.
The views expressed on this program are not necessarily those of WTJX, its board, staff, or underwriters. This program was underwritten in part by
Janelle Encarnacion Art.
And viewers like you.